Hello, everyone. I'm Philip Osteen, Dean of the University of Utah College of Social Work. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the college's first Social Work Beyond the Classroom presentation of the academic year. As the name of the series suggests, these presentations allow us to delve into the work that engages our faculty members outside of their teaching duties and to provide learning opportunities for students, graduates, and others in the community. We welcome our virtual attendees. Thank you for making time to join us live or for those who are watching this recording at a later time. We express our sincere gratitude to those who donated while registering. These donations will support Officers Hollow, which is a very big, very fun community building Halloween event that is planned and organized by our BSW students. It brings hundreds of kids from across the valley to our campus and helps our students gain valuable organizing experience. So again, thank you so much for your generosity. Before we start our presentation, on behalf of the College of Social Work, I want to recognize our American Indian and Indigenous community members by acknowledging that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the endearing relationship that exists between many Indigenous peoples in their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. Today, we are excited to showcase Dr. Brad Lundahl and Cole Benson's work on motivational interviewing and how social workers can leverage technology to better assist clients. Brad Lundahl is an associate professor here in the College of Social Work. He earned a PhD in clinical psychology from Northern Illinois University, has trained and worked with both co-founders of motivational interviewing, and is interested in researching factors that motivate people to change individual behaviors. In addition to his university work, Brad owns a small private practice, Compass Counseling and Consulting, where he works with individuals and families. Cole Benson is a licensed clinical social worker and senior research analyst with the Social Research Institute here at the University of Utah College of Social Work. His current projects focus on evaluating the state of social worker competency practices and creating and improving training tools for workforce development. Cole and Brad are both graduates of our MSW program. Following their presentation, Brad and Cole will have about 10 minutes to respond to audience questions. So please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit questions that you might have. And with that, Brad and Cole, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Osteen. Pleasure to be here and a pleasure to present with Cole on this very exciting effort. So today we're going to talk about this idea of learning motivational interviewing through a virtual platform. We'll talk a little bit about motivational interviewing, but more about this kind of platform that's been developed. So we have some learning objectives for you, and those are the following. To understand how technology can blend with best practices, in particular motivational interviewing, understand how technology can promote, again, the idea of best practices, especially using deliberate practice. You've probably heard of that, this idea of getting to become an expert through 10,000 hours of specialized training. So this app kind of moves us in that direction. And then we'll talk a little bit about how we develop the technology and a little bit about motivational interviewing.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Osteen and Brad. A little bit about the Virtual Motivational Interviewing app, or VMI, I'll probably refer to it as VMI throughout this presentation, is that it's a phone-based app. So for your iPhone, for your Android, for your tablet, it's housed on those. And later on here, we're actually going to demonstrate a little bit of what the app looks like, talk about how it's developed, and see how it's hoping to be used in the future to build skills. A little bit of how it's being used right now. So for the past 3 years, it's been used here with our child welfare workforce in the state of Utah with DCFS as part of an advanced engagement training for seasoned workers looking to increase their engagement skills with children and families. Also this semester, we're really excited that the USC, their MSW program, they're rolling out MSW-wide in their motivational interviewing courses, looking at a research study of some using the VMI app, some using general role play, and looking at some of the efficacy of the app to build on some of the research we've done here. Also, California State Long Beach, they're another university, for example, that's been using it. They did it this past summer and spring. We're excited for that ongoing partnership, as well as some other exciting partnerships we have with the University of Utah Physical Education Department. We have a grant with them of adapting this VMI app from child welfare to physical therapy to help physical therapists use some motivational interviewing skills. And also at the Social Research Institute, we're always researching what we're doing. And we currently have an in-press waiting to come out publication looking at some studies on the usability, satisfaction, and initial efficacy of the app. So that's overall what it is. We'll get into a little bit more later on in this. And before I move forward, I want to make sure to give credit where credit is due. Brad and I love working on this project. Like, I'll speak for you, Brad. I love getting to work on it. But really just a small cog in machine of all the people that contribute to make this happen. There's some wonderful people I want to give credit to. Chad McDonald, the director of SRI and the PI on this project and the funding that helps us do it. Also, Matt Davis, one of the founders, originators of this, from the Call to Social Work previously, now is over in psychiatry, population health sciences, a psychologist by trade. Myself and Brad, also Marty Bowles, who's been instrumental in helping create some of the content for VMI and push it along. And then we get to partner with the Therapeutic Games and Application Labs, the GAP Lab here on campus. And that's a team of generally video game design students, some full-time staff. And I always like to brag and give a plug for them. We found out that in the last few years, they've been ranked as high as 2 or 3 in the entire world for video game design. So we get to work with a diverse array of graduate students from all over the world that come to this program that are really skilled and talented in the building this app. And then, of course, Bill Miller and Stephen Rolnick, the founders of MI, building on the work they've done.
All right, so let's set the stage here. Like, why are we moving into this space? And so, Cole, I want to push a button. I think you're the guy who's pushing the buttons here. So, so just imagine this for a second. Imagine we have this person and they're living in their life, in their little life box, and things are fine. But then some insults happen, right? Let's say a skunk enters into their life box. And so you can see that right there is the skunk, and it's not so bad at the moment because this person has a large life box, and so things are not terrible. But then what happens if someone's life box gets smaller, and then maybe smaller, and then maybe smaller? Now, this is where life isn't so good, right? Like, we can find ourselves as humans in positions, and I'm not just trying to blame individuals. There's certainly societal reasons or structural reasons that contribute to this. But humans can find themselves in a pretty difficult place. And if you're coming to this presentation on motivational interviewing, there's an idea that motivational interviewing can help, mobilize energy and mobilize actions to help people try to build that bigger life box. And, if we kind of combine some Newtonian physics here, objects in motion tend to stay in motion unless otherwise acted upon. And so when we're sitting across from individuals or families that are a bit stuck or in a bit of a difficult time, the goal is like, how do we help them take action? And so why did we choose motivational interviewing? So one is there's strong support, research support for motivational interviewing, and we're not going to talk about that support right now. And then within motivational interviewing, the skills are pretty well articulated. We can understand what they are. We can kind of break them down into their component parts, which is really in alignment with deliberate practice. And then the skills are pretty easy to learn and observe. So it's not the most difficult, if you will, approach to kind of master. And so all these factors kind of lend themselves to, using motivational interviewing, the technology. And then MI is a great approach. It's kind, it's compassionate, and it's sorely needed in today's society. So it really is a generous approach and a compassionate approach of engaging with people. Now, what's motivational interviewing's value add? And we're not going to go deep into that. We'll talk a little bit about it. But MI is really great about how do we promote an engagement with our clients? How do we find that, if you will, shared decision-making so there's a real attunement or alignment as we're working with people? Part of the 4 tasks of MI are this idea of engagement, creating, like I said, shared decision-making around goals, and then helping people evoke their own motivation, their own reasons for taking change, as opposed to us trying to, foist it upon them. Then MI is also great at kind of building, if you will, credible plans based on what, clients already know and what they've already done. If you think about it, skills are friends. They're friends to our clients. If our clients are in a pretty desperate position, they want a provider who is prepared to help them move forward. And so we like skills. And then for ourselves, skills are also great because it can move us out of that position of feeling like an imposter to feeling some competency or some sense of efficacy. That is, I'm sitting across from someone, I have a model of what to do, and I know how to do it. And therefore, I should be able to probably relax a little bit and not have so much of a hyper anxious focus on myself, but rather attend to the person in front of me and give more brain cells to thinking about who they are and what their struggles are, so we can maybe help them move forward. All right, teaching skills. It's kind of resource intensive. Even to one person, it can be resource intensive. But then we're going to talk about what if it's larger? What if we're trying to teach a bunch of people? Then it's more resource intensive. And so as we think about the idea of technology and how it can begin to stretch and kind of reach more people, that's one of the reasons we're kind of pursuing this project. Same thing with skills. Teaching one skill, it's not so bad. We can learn how to do that. Turns out motivational interviewing has a lot of different skills. Skills around engaging, evoking goals, motivation, plans, responding to ambivalence, resistance. There are a lot of, if you will, very specific skills out there. And so it's a pretty heavy lift to get a lot of people trained in motivational interviewing.
Awesome. And so exactly, there's these barriers and some difficulties to training. So how can technology help? And that's where the VMI app hopefully comes in to help address some of those barriers. And again, briefly, just to talk about it, here's some screenshots of what it looks like in the app. And later on here in just a few minutes, I'll run through of what it looks like to actually go through the app for you, as well as a video demonstration of some of our interactive features with it. But overall, it's informationally, it's a phone-based app. Like Brad said, it's really focused on skills practice and role-playing those skills. And then also the theory of deliberate practice, like Brad talked about, it's based in the learning theory. Sometimes when I'm talking to people about this app, I compare it to like a Duolingo, Rosetta Stone, if you're familiar with that, of this language learning app. But instead of learning the language of Spanish or Portuguese, I'm learning the language of motivational interviewing as part of this app, and I get to practice those skills. So what are some of the challenges and barriers? Brad touched on some, the resource intensity that technology hopes to address. What are some other challenges and barriers? Because we don't want to create technology just for technology's sake. Technology is awesome, but sometimes it's just the proverbial shiny object. We want to be effective and utilize it in a way that, like I said, is effective. And then also, how do we leverage technology to address some barriers? So what are some of those other barriers? One is learning MI isn't easy. Like any sort of skill, if you're a musician or an athlete, or you're on a new job, learning skills are difficult and they take time, and MI is no different. Learning skills can be challenging. Another is having a safe environment and not learning on the backs of our clients. And what I mean from learning on the backs of our clients, I'm sure some of you joining today are social workers, psychologists. As part of your training education, you might have done an internship or a practicum. And a practicum is supposed to sound like practice. And it is. It's a great way to learn skills and develop, but it's really not practice. It's really performance. We are working with real people and real clients that have repercussions to our decision and our learning, that if we're having to learn our mistakes with real people, there's real world consequences with that. So how do we have a safe environment where we're not learning on the backs of our clients for their sake and for our own?
Hey, Cole, can I introduce a quick little story on that?
Yeah.
So when I was a child, my father was a school teacher, and in the summers we rented out horses. So that was part of the gig that I did as a kid. And I remember people would come and say, "I've never ridden a horse before." And my father would often say, "Well, this horse has never been ridden before, so you're the same." And that never inspired, kind of as a joke, right? But I think this idea of, preparing ourselves as well as possible so that when we are engaging with our clients, that we're giving them the best services possible. Thanks for letting me share that story.
No, I like that story. Yeah, and exactly, we don't want to be in that position. It's like you hope those people come that at least the horse has done this before. It's hard when maybe it's the client's first time in therapy before, and it's our first time ever practicing therapy skills with them. That's often not the best formula. And lastly, what Brad touched on, like scaling training and coaching economically. So how do we do this as a broad scale? In a classroom, if there's a teacher and you're responsible for all of your students, or you're out of practice, it's really hard to get supervised and coaching and mentoring all the time with that. So how can we do that at a broader scale? So part of solving a problem is we want to look at who else maybe solved this problem, who does it really well. And a number of years ago, I think probably 7 or 8 at this point, Chad McDonald and Matt Davis, some of the founders of this who I touched on earlier, they had this question coming from psychology, human services, child welfare, of how do we train people to competence before doing the work? That would be wonderful if we could do that. And so looking at who does that really well. And we look at some of the fields that do that well: sports, music, the military, medicine, all do that pretty good. And one that I really like to do, because they do it exceptionally well, is aviation. So aviation, if you look at this graph, it's the amount of plane crash deaths per 10 billion miles. And we see that before 1940, it was about 2,100 deaths per 10 billion. And then a stark drop to present day that's almost non-existent statistically. And when we look at child welfare or social work, the way we train is kind of where aviation was before 1940. Before 1940, to be a pilot, you learned about flying in a classroom. You maybe read some textbooks about it, about physics. You had someone who had done it before talk to you about what it's like. But then to be a pilot, you pretty much jumped in the plane. You tried to take off, fly, land. If you could do that, awesome. You were a pilot. And if you couldn't and you crashed and burned, maybe you weren't a pilot, unfortunately. And that model is unfortunately kind of where social work child welfare is now, where aviation used to be. You learn about the practices in a classroom, textbooks, some articles. You might role play a little bit in class, learn from a supervisor, but then most of your skill and development is supposed to happen on the job with real clients. And making a mistake might not be as drastic as crashing a plane, but like we said, there's still real world consequences for these children and families we work with while we're learning. So look at aviation. What happened in 1940? How come it lowered so much? And that's really the invention of this flight simulator. So pilots able to train and simulate in a variety of different scenarios of what's it like to take off, to land, how do I handle this type of weather, this wind, if there's turbulence, if this happens, and we can train in these specific scenarios in a realistic, safe environment that by the time they go to fly in a plane, we have a high degree of confidence that they're competent. Recently found out, and I didn't know this till doing some of this work, that sometimes a pilot's first flight in a plane will be with passengers in it because we have such that high level of confidence that are trained to be competent in this through the flight simulator. So that's really the idea that we have behind this. And I know it's a lofty goal to train social workers to this high level of competence before they ever set foot in, but that's the idea behind VMI and some of these other training modalities we're working on here at the U. And it's different than the physics of flying an airplane. Human services is much more complex, but that's the impetus for what we're going for. That's the goal behind what we're doing. So also, I'll talk a little bit, I'll show this graph. This is from low to high competence, moving left to right. Some of the things that start with the initial learning, quizzes, vignettes, reading, role play. We do a really great job of that. What's a little harder in social work or human services, that initial practice daily performance. So some of these short skills, focused training sessions, ongoing coaching, building training sessions are harder to do. And we're hoping to accomplish some of those that lead to higher competence with this VMI app. So how do we know we're building skills or we're getting to expert performance? And how we do that is we always want to follow theory. We want to be evidence-based in what we develop and what we practice. The theory we follow is Erickson's deliberate practice theory. Some of you may have heard of. It's a theory of how do we reliably create mastery or expertise, particularly of skills. So it's really great. They use this in military or athletics, sports, things that like, how do you build this skill to be an expert? They follow this deliberate practice approach, and we want to use that when building skills here for social work or child welfare. You see the graph on the right, get to that expert performance versus arrested development or everyday skills. I always like the saying, practice doesn't make perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect. Just doing something over and over doesn't get us better at that. I always think of driving a car or walking. Been driving for a number of years. I've been walking most of my life. I don't think I definitely get better at it every year just because I'm doing it more. I need to do it in a prescribed way, this deliberate way to build that expert performance. So there's some tenets of deliberate practice I'll go over here quickly that we look to incorporate into this VMI app. One of which is looking at specific skills. So small skills and then building on more complex. If we use aviation, for example, maybe it's just working on the takeoff. Maybe it's just how to put down that landing brake. And I get that down and then I build on the skill together instead of just throw you in at once and do the whole thing. For VMI, motivation interviewing, in the app, that looks like I'm just going to work on my complex reflections, or I'll just work on open-ended questions. So then when I'm thrown in with a client, I got those down. Those are second nature. And I don't have to focus on everything else in this because I have that small skill down and then I can build on it. Also, you want to be learning under the guidance of a coach or a teacher. Like Brad said, that's resource intensive when you have a huge group to always be getting coaching feedback. In the VMI app, we have coaching and feedback every step of the way, everything you're doing. That's something Brad's helped us build into it. So it's awesome, this app. You basically have Brad in your pocket. Whatever you do, Brad's giving you some feedback every step of the way and guidance in that coaching. And that goes along with the frequent feedback there. And the last bit, tenet of deliberate practice we really try to incorporate is the repetition and frequent practice. Some of you maybe have been to trainings before. I go to a 2-day, 8-hour training, very intensive. I do it, and then I never learn about it again. There's no follow-up coaching, and I'm expected to maintain and retain what I learned there. That's hard to do. We know it's more effectively to learn if you're doing small portions over time. And that's some of the good feedback we've gotten from the VMI app. We had one student say, "This is awesome. I get to pull it out and practice while I'm sitting in the car waiting to pick up my son from school." Or some child welfare worker saying, "I love doing this before court or before a team meeting because I can really rehearse reflections or how to normalize and empathize. I can practice that skill for a few minutes before I jump into something." So that's how we're incorporating learning theory into this. And I'm going to share my screen to show you a little bit of what the app looks like now, to walk through one of the skills briefly, what it looks like in the text-based. And I don't know if, Brad, you have anything you want to share before I hop into that.
No, as you're doing that, I'll just kind of say it out loud here as writing a message. So as far as getting access to the app, it's still kind of under development. We're still kind of rolling it out. And so our legal team is requiring that there's a form that people sign in terms of kind of getting permission to use it under certain constraints. Cole, do you want to address that further at this moment? I know there's a lot of questions in the app there.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, since it's ongoing in development, we do have some CDA, like basically saying, I won't make money off this. I won't try and make it mine since it's in development if you're wanting to use it. But we're working towards getting away from that, where people will just have access to it. It is in the Google Play Store for Android and the Apple Store for iPhone right now. If you're interested and this is something you want to utilize, feel free to shoot me a message. I think Chad put emails in here, and I'm happy to either set something up with you, or as we progress over time, maybe where we don't need you to sign anything and it's just download like the other apps in the store, which we're hoping to get to. Can keep you posted on that. But yeah, thanks, Brad. And so here I'll show a little bit in the app of what it looks like here. So we see those specific discrete skills. So after I've logged in, I have my own account that's tracking my progress over time, so I can see my own improvement. I see how much time I spend in it. I see how I'm scoring. Also, a professor or a teacher trainer could also see, how's my cohort doing? I can look and see who's practicing, who maybe needs more help on certain skills, who's doing really well at something, and tailor training that way. So we see there's these about 19 different skills on here. I won't go through all of them, but right now I'll jump in and just show you maybe what complex reflections looks like. And if you think about how an instructor or teacher or coach typically trains a skill, you think they'll introduce it, define what it is. So here's what this skill is. They'll tell you why you use it. So here's the skill, here's why we'd use it. And then maybe they would talk about an instance they've used it before. Maybe they would call on someone in the class and role play together. So you find out, what's the definition? Why would I use this? I get to have that vicarious learning, watching someone else do it. And then you would get in and practice yourself. So thinking of that format, that's really how they're supposed to be set up in the app this way. So I'll show you here quickly the complex reflection. And I do want to note this is actually an older version of the app. We've updated some things because in this demonstration, there's going to be one typo, and I apologize, that has been fixed. This is just an older one. So I say, I want to jump in here and learn about complex reflections. And this mentor, you can think of this as Brad. This is derived from motivational interviewing experts we've had contribute to here. Say, okay, we've gone through the simple reflections. Now let's try some complex ones. So they tell me what a complex reflection is. You know, it's a comment that reflects the basic family message, plus I'm adding or extending their meaning. This can involve discussing emotions expected to be present that aren't expressed, what the family values, making connections with them. If I ever want to refer back, I can click on these hyperlinks, my definitions there. This is also great. Maybe I go to a motivational interviewing training 6 months later, I'm like, what are complex reflections? I can always go back in the app and get a refresher. And then they tell me why I would use a complex reflection. So just like simple reflections, these help families feel understood, decrease resistance, increase a bond. They also can help gain more self-awareness by exploring motivation barriers to change. So I have an idea. Great, that's what it is, why I'd use it. Now I'm going to jump in and try it out. So I go into complex reflections, and now I want to do skills practice here. So I go to skills practice, and just like before, I know what the skill is, but now I want to watch someone else do it and see how it's done first with that kind of vicarious learning aspect. So they say, we're going to jump in and do some together. Let's respond to this caregiver I might be working with. So we see what a caregiver might say. And again, these are all child welfare based. We typically work with the child welfare workforce, but we're adapting this for others. And they say, I'm really fed up with people judging my parenting. This is crap. How would you feel if people are always calling you into the state? And so this mentor is going to show you how they'd respond, but they're also going to talk through what they're thinking of why they respond this way. So they say something, you know, like, I see this person's upset and I want to try to connect it to some of their core values and emotions. To me, it seems like parenting is something that's important to them and they are distrusting the people that call them into the state. Here's how I'd respond. And we see their complex reflection. They say it's insulting to have other people judge you about something as important as parenting. Further, this DCS report weakens your trust in other people. And then you see how this person might respond. They say, exactly. It's like these people don't even know how much I do or care about my kids. They go straight to calling you guys. And then here's that immediate feedback piece. So this is from a mentor like Brad saying, you know, when we work with caregivers, we experience a lot of emotions. They could be anger, confusion, even sadness. We want to build rapport in this challenging time and help them feel heard. Complex reflections help us do that to understand their experience.
I can just jump here.
Oh yeah, please.
So when we talk about motivational interviewing, there's usually those two arms: the spirit of motivational interviewing, which is kind of an attitude of, you know, humanism, compassion, you know, attunement with people, choice. So those things can be kind of difficult to kind of represent in very specific skills and deliberate practice. But I think this mentor language certainly hints at that there's an attitude behind motivational interviewing of deep respect for another person. And we hope that comes out in these mentor messages.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Brad, because this is very skills based, and MI is skills and also the spirit of MI too. And we're hoping to blend some of those with the skills practice. So I'm going to move through here quick. We won't watch another example, but essentially the same thing's going to happen. They're going to walk through a conversation with the client, what they're thinking, how they'd respond. And so we've seen a couple. Now let's try some on our own. They say, let's jump in our own. For here, we're going to talk to Rosa, who's been asked to contact her children's father following some allegations of neglect. So what they say is, I don't even know where that person is, and you guys are asking me to come and have them talk about things. So now I get to choose what is the complex reflection I'd want to use. And this is a multiple choice interaction. We have a number of different learning interactions. There's multiple choice, there's some free response, you're typing your own, there's some select all, some coding type exercises where you're picking out things from a conversation. And then we're also moving towards a speech base, which I'll show you right after this. So here I want to choose, for example, I'll choose any of them. Maybe I just choose, they have to come. So how can we get them here? And it gives me an X, like, maybe that's not the best complex reflection. I see how they'd respond. They say, I would have already done that if I knew. Like, okay, I see them shutting down. And then I get this feedback from the mentor. They say, asking ways in which the caregiver can approach the issue may be helpful insight later in the conversation, but let's try to connect with them in an effort to understand their concern first. Here, we simply tell them that this person has to come. We didn't validate their concerns and they might feel at conflict with us. So after I get the feedback, I'm able to go and try it again. So with that feedback, maybe I think, here's the complex reflection. You're not sure what to do with this request, to have them come in because you don't know where they are. And then I see a different response here. Exactly, I'm not sure what to do if I can't find them. And then you get feedback again here saying, great job, this validates concerns and infers that deeper meaning about uncertainty. So that's very brief. That's just one interaction. There is dozens and dozens, and there's always more being developed here where you can just go and practice these skills over and over in multiple choice, in free response, different ones, as well as audio speech-based that I'll demonstrate here in just a moment as I share. I'm having to switch between a phone device back to the computer here.
While you're doing that, Cole, so this really is kind of a dynamic process. The app, attempts to be dynamic like that, where there's those responses that aren't just static. And then the app is developing in new ways. We have a couple of, said very gently, nerdy people, Chad and Matt, are very much interested in kind of advancing the technology of this program. So I think that's what you're maybe going to show us now, is something that's forthcoming. Is that right, Cole?
Yeah, no, you were spot on. So just like Brad was saying, and we do have some wonderful people that are in a lot of ways much smarter than me at these things as far as the AI and tech development. I talked about that Gap Lab where we're very lucky, and often they have to deal with sometimes my Microsoft Paint drawings say, I think it should look like this. Can you make it happen? And they can take it and run with it. So right now, what I showed you is the text-based version. And in deliberate practice, we talked about we want to build on skills from simple to more complex. So I do something simply just text-based. I have time to think about it, but I want to build to actually talking with the client. And one way we can maybe do that without speaking with a real client is using AI. And so Matt Davis, our resident AI expert, he's been working to develop this AI component that's in testing right now. So it's something we're working on to roll out in the app. We have some versions with it right now. But what I'm going to show you is an example of Matt walking through with our AI Maria. So Maria, who's responding, is an AI generated vignette that's involved in child welfare that we created that Matt's going to practice MI skills with. And he's going to do some good skills. He's going to do some not so great skills. And then at the end, he's going to be graded and get feedback on it. So I'm going to play this clip right now. Brad, will you please let me know if you can hear it? I'm always worried it won't come through.
Here are a few goals you can choose from for our conversation. 1. Understand Maria's challenges with childcare and support needs. 2. Explore Maria's feelings about her current situation and foster care involvement. 3. Identify Maria's strengths and how they can help her achieve her goals. 4. Discuss Maria's hopes and plans for the future of her family. 5. Help Maria express her concerns about her child's well-being and safety. Which goal would you like to focus on?
Goal number 1.
You have selected the goal. Understand Maria's challenges with childcare and support needs. Remember, your task is to use the specified motivational interviewing techniques to guide our conversation towards achieving this goal. Start the conversation by asking me an open-ended question.
How are things going with your kids?
Well, it's been pretty tough, honestly. Juggling everything with my kids, especially with school and daycare, has been really stressful. Some days, it feels like I'm barely keeping up.
You're having a hard time juggling everything, and it's an incredible amount of stress?
Yeah, exactly. I try to do it all, but sometimes it just feels like too much. Like I'm always one step away from things falling apart.
That must be very difficult. Tell me more about the feeling of being one step away from things falling apart.
It's like I'm constantly on edge. I worry about missing something important or that I won't be able to handle it all. If daycare falls through or I can't make it to work, everything spirals. It feels like there's no room for any mistakes, you know?
Yeah, that sounds like a very tough situation. You're trying to just keep everything going, and it's just one step away from everything falling apart.
Exactly, that's it. I feel like I'm always scrambling to keep things together, and it's exhausting. But what else can I do, right? I just keep going, hoping nothing big happens to throw it all off.
Well, could you
Be
pause
able
it
to
real
put
quick?
yourself through this and this kind of stress.
So just as a, sorry, we're breaking the fourth wall here. There's both good practice and, if you will, bad practice in this example. So right now you're hearing what's kind of on point with motivational interviewing, and then it's maybe going to go in a little bit of a different direction. So just wanting you to know that, and that's on purpose, 'cause otherwise Matt would be flawless.
You must care deeply about your kids.
Yeah, I really do. They're my world, and I just want to give them the best I can, even if it's hard. It's not easy, but I do anything for them. I just wish it wasn't always so overwhelming.
Have you tried to write down things on a list?
Why does everyone think a list is the answer? I've tried that, but honestly, it doesn't help much. My day just doesn't go according to plan most of the time, so the list just ends up being more things I can't get to.
Sometimes it can help to change the way we think about things. Have you tried changing the way you think about things?
I've heard that before, but it's not that easy. I've tried thinking more positively or just staying calm, but when you're in it, it's hard to shift your mindset. Things don't just change because you think about them differently.
Grade me.
Here's your feedback based on the motivational interviewing techniques we practiced. Frequency count, open-ended questions, 1, affirmations, 1, simple reflections, 2, complex reflections, 1, strengths. You asked a thoughtful, open-ended question about how things are going with my kids, which opened the conversation well. Your reflections showed you were actively listening, especially when reflecting my feelings of stress and things falling apart. You made a strong affirmation about how much I care for my kids, which helped deepen the conversation. Areas for improvement. You gave advice and suggestions, like mentioning lists and changing the way I think. This led me to shut down a bit, which is a common reaction when advice is given in MI. Try to stay away from problem solving or offering solutions unless I'm specifically asking for them. Work on adding more complex reflections, as these help build deeper understanding by adding meaning or extending awareness. The most important thing to improve would be avoiding giving advice, as it can make me feel like you're not fully understanding my situation.
Okay, great. So that's what's coming, I think, with VMI. Not I think that is what's coming. And like Brad said, we want to demonstrate some good and bad practice to also show you it's dynamically responding to what you say. And it's something that's ongoing testing. It's not in full rollout now, but the way AI is moving, it's here to stay, it seems like, and we want to leverage it to the best of our ability for this. I also want to say, I think sometimes with AI technology and different things is this fear that it replaces that real human connection. And by no means are we trying to do that or think that's even the best route, but this is really something to help supplement other training, where maybe I go through training, I've worked with clients, with my supervisor, but I'm at home by myself and I want to still practice these skills to hone them. Here's a great chance that I don't need someone else to role play with. I don't need a real client. I can still work on these skills and be getting this immediate feedback here. Brad, do you have anything else to add before we move on from demonstration?
I don't think so. I think that's great. Thank you.
Great. So then that's a bit about where we are, where we're growing, and what's next. So our VMI roadmap. I think first of all, it's really important to talk about it's iterative and dynamic. This isn't intended to be something that we created. All right, it's on the shelf for sale. It never changes. That's not the goal. It's really something that's made to be available to everyone that can learn and grow from it. And also it's dynamic and always changing. One of the other wonderful benefits of technology is having it on the App Store. As it's new and updated or more content comes online, that's automatically pushed out to the device. One example we have is the Miller and Rolnick MI Handbook came out with a 4th edition this past year, and it had some new skills So we wanted to update the VMI app and incorporate those. So we have that in there now. We're also adapting it to a number of different fields. Like we talked about, this is developed for child welfare, and that's our biggest use and content so far. But we also have this contract with physical therapy. We're working to adapt it so physical therapists can use and practice motivational interviewing with their clients. We also use this as part of our behavioral health technician course at the University of Utah. So using these skills in other mental health, social service industries like residential treatment, substance use, in schools, hospitals, things outside child welfare. And then using this AI as a way to enhance the app. You saw this demonstration of how, I have in quotes, actually talking to someone. So it's not an actual person, but that closer simulates the real thing compared to just text-based. So how can we get closer to working with a real client in a safe environment that's not with a real client to have true practice opportunities? And then also the rate of just content development. Right now, there's thousands and thousands of different learning interactions in the app. And typically that is just built by me, Brad, Marty, who I mentioned earlier, other MI experts here in Utah, California, some other states, of just creating all that content and feedback by hand. One of the wonderful things about AI is that we already have all this content developed. We can put that into an AI model and say, here's what we like, here's some vignettes we created, create us some more multiple choice exercises with this. And then we're not creating things from scratch, but we're going through them, just vetting them to make sure they are maintaining fidelity with MI. We're giving the right feedback that way. And that saves us a lot of time and also helps us develop an exponentially larger rate. And then also we can incorporate deliberate practice theory with AI. You saw Matt with that feedback. We're getting immediate feedback right after our session of what we did well, how many of the skills we used. And that's really great. You think about going in a typical therapy session. I don't finish my therapy session and then at the end I get feedback saying, all right, Cole, here's how many of these skills you used. Here's some things you could have done better. Here's some things you did well. So provide that immediate feedback with AI we can, as well as the other tenets of deliberate practice. And then of course, I'm at the Social Research Institute. We're always wanting to conduct research from an ethical standpoint, from a curiosity standpoint of making sure this app actually works. We're actually being able to teach skills in an effective way. So we've done a randomized control trial here looking at initial efficacy. What we found in that is from pre to post, so measuring a person's skill and observation of skills at a pre-test, and then either going through a role play or using the VMI app for a training portion and then measuring skill afterward. We've seen a statistically significant increase in skill in both groups. So people that typically do the standard role plays, we see that increase in skill. They got their typical lecture, usual role playing groups, increased skill, and then also VMI increased skill. And we weren't seeing any difference between those groups. And again, that's initial, and we need to do more testing and research, and we're doing some at USC this semester, things going forward. I also said California specific. One of the cool things with this app is our, what we call a co-op approach. So California approached us for a different project, but I think it'll be incorporated here into VMI. They said, this is great what Utah did, but we want a California specific one. We want to help create a vignette of what a family looks like that we work with here in LA and some of the challenges they face. And they help create this vignette of a California family that maybe we're not as used to in Utah or have some blind spots. And they develop that, and we can incorporate their expertise in a different, maybe family dynamic or app with the idea, California wanted this, we made it for them, but now it's available to everyone. So essentially the water lifts all boats, if you will. So we have partners throughout Utah and throughout the country that are hoping to contribute this with the idea can contribute to content in a diverse array of a number of different things. So I apologize. I'm like hearing some emails come in. I hope you're not getting like the constant dings from me. Yeah, and that's it. I wanted to say thank you to Brad and Danielle and Dr. Osteen and Chad, who've all helped put this together, and you all for coming to listen. Brad, do you have anything?
Yeah, also gratitude, and certainly an openness to hear what do you all see? What are some of your thoughts as you're kind of observing what we're doing? We think it can be pretty broadly adapted. Like for PT, what we're doing there is getting together with some specialists in physical therapy and they're trying to, I guess, skin it or kind of, reframe it so it's very specific to their world as opposed to the mental health side. Yeah, so thanks to everyone. I guess there's some questions, Cole, and well, Chad, Chad, one of the brain children of this, or probably the star of the show here. Anything you'd like to add, Chad?
No, other than we appreciate everybody's interest in this. Our goal is to make sure that we meet the need of the workforce in becoming better at the things that we know are evidence-backed at what would improve relationships and hence outcomes with their clients in numerous industries. So those of you who have put your emails in the chat, we appreciate that interest. Make sure to reach out to Cole still. That would be a better way to do that. And Cole, apologize, you're getting inundated with some emails here. So we're gonna have to sort through that. So please be patient with us, not only on helping you get access, but also on understanding that this is still a tool that is what they call in R&D, research and development. But because the demand is so high, not only in Utah, but across the country, we're just trying to make sure that we can not only adequately meet the demand, but do so effectively with a good tool, a good product. And that does take time and, well, for lack of a better word, deliberate approach to making sure that it is something that is beneficial for you all. So thank you for your attention to that. Now, Brad, there is a question here asking about our courses taught online via Zoom. Are you still teaching? I don't know if you want to address that, Brad.
We are currently developing through the College of Social Work an elective in motivational interviewing. I think that will be for registered students only. And yeah, every now and then I still teach motivational interviewing. Thank you for the well wishes, April and others. And then to Sarah's question, I don't know that we've talked about that. So this is like actually getting like Bill Miller and Steve Rolnick to be in the app, and so that they can kind of work with you, but it's the computer. What are your thoughts on that, Chad?
In terms of whether there's a shift to assist people we're working with to develop and create their own goals, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant question, and certainly something that we can consider as these are personalized or as the training is individualized. Right now, we're focusing primarily on the worker, the clinician, the case manager, the professional that is interfaced with the client, and certainly we can consider ways that we can effectively build in creating goals in the future. Currently, that is not a feature. And whether or not the app will be available in different languages, we hope so, absolutely. And that is something that is not off the table for sure. Currently, it's just English.
No, thank you. And I see a lot of people interested in using it. And I apologize. I thank you everyone for reaching out. I think it was probably my email that kept dinging and I wasn't able to go away and mute that while presenting. So apologies and thank you for the interest. If people are interested in the app, like we said, right now, it is on the Apple, the iPhone store and Android. You will be able to find it there. You will need an authorization with that. And I'm happy to coordinate with each of you that are interested. If you want just to shoot me an email, more than happy. We can discuss internally what that looks like. Typically right now, like Chad and Brad were saying, we have to sign some agreement for those that are using it, but we're working towards another solution with that. Or if it's something you're open to, we can figure that out.
I will add too that they're true to the tenets of deliberate practice. We are on the precipice of releasing an outward-facing dashboard, so you can not only go in and see your past performance on the individual skills, but get into each of the practice sessions to understand and learn from your performance over time, as it will provide for your trajectory and how you are improving, moving from a novice, for example, through intermediate to more advanced and even expert in each of the different skills, and where you can focus your energy and work to the skills that may need greater attention versus the ones you're doing really well in as well. So just want to add that. And are we, I don't know.
So there's a question. There's a few questions coming in. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Malaya, Mahalaya. So I think it's a fair question. Like, I know Cole talked about this, the shininess of technology and what it can do. And I think it's important to realize that sometimes that can capture a lot of our attention. But learning really is, or learning 101 really is about understanding, okay, here's a concept. Um, here are the component parts. I'm going to try that and get feedback to it. And then over and over and over again. Sometimes in one of my classes, I play a video of the GOAT, meaning Serena Williams playing tennis. And she's practicing, she's got like, I don't know how many 15 Grand Slams under her belt at the time, but she's practicing these very basic skills. And so if AI can facilitate that, it'll be great. And at the end of the day, it really is about, if you're trying to develop a skill, uh, you got to understand what the skill is, try it out, and then get that feedback that is specific to that. So that would be my response to that. But AI is, I don't think we want to get over exuberant about it, but it's certainly encroaching into the work that we've traditionally done.
Yeah. And I would add that that's such a great question. And it's always important with any AI shifting of what's being deprioritized. I like that. And with AI, I think for me, a lot of it comes from the social work lens is, okay, we feed in all this information to it in this vignette and it's created with us and different things. And so it's only going to base it on that model. And like, what are my own blind spots or my own biases that I might be feeding into it? And if we're generating, what AI does is it just exponentially grows any biases or blind spots I have if I've created that. So always being critical of what we're putting into it will influence what it outputs. And that's something why we're always trying to partner with people out of the state or other jurisdictions saying, what are we missing? What can you help to input into these models so that we have different viewpoints in there? Because that's a great point. And I don't know if Richie, yours moved from answered, but I saw this is any plans of it used in the college. And I think, we would love to. I know you've been generous enough to use it in a research base in some of your courses, but I think definitely some opportunity for that. Maybe we can touch base on that moving forward. We would love to.
I see one more question there. Did you answer that already, Brad, regarding the centering of AI and social work research? Downsides? Okay.
Try to. I think it's a good question. You only got so much focus, and where do you put it?
Right.
It's a fair question.
We'd like to think we're not deprioritizing some of the other fundamental elements. We understand that these tools, a lot of people get excited for tech's sake, and we often find ourselves tempering that excitement with the realities that the bells and whistles themselves do not make a good app, much less a good learning experience necessarily. And so that's why our priority is on whatever method is most likely, as we understand it, to improve learning within the interactions of the platform. That's why we have it on a phone app, and we have other learning skills that are on in a virtual reality headset, or other that is in just on the tab or the laptops. So we prioritize what aspects we think are most likely to support a learning experience. And no, regarding the question, Richie, have we been able to measure outcomes for those who use MI AI? We are actually looking, I think Cole, you mentioned we have done some testing of this with students, and we are looking at right now the efficacy of or considering assessing the efficacy of the AI feedback versus actual person MI expert feedback to look at the difference in that. But out in terms of outcomes with the AI, no, we have not broadly implemented that. Richie.
Other opportunities for instance, Jen, I think or Chad's typing, but I think there's absolutely opportunities for this. It's something we've done before. Often it's on a voluntary basis. If someone wants to be involved with research or this, we're always looking for new people. Like Chad said, with the AI, there's really two veins we're looking to go through right now. Like Richie said, the efficacy of is using this helping in skill development, and also looking at how accurate is our feedback and scoring in the app. As you saw that demonstration where Matt talks to the AI, it says, here's your frequency count, how many you use, here's areas for improvement, here's areas that you did really well. We also want to be making sure that the app is giving accurate frequency counts always, it's giving good feedback. So we're looking to test in both those, and there's a wealth of opportunity if students are ever interested in being involved in research. We would love that. And again, same email if you're ever interested in that, feel free to reach out to me. We can coordinate.
There's still lots of room for human intelligence here. Sometimes in motivational interviewing, close-ended questions have been, I don't know if you call them penalized, but they're not smiled upon as broadly because you might get into an interrogation kind of mode. But then if you think about it, some close-ended questions are great. If I were to say to you, hey, Chad, are you interested in, changing X behavior? And you say yes, then I can say, well, tell me why. And so, I don't know when AI gets there, but there is still a lot of room for us to be kind of thinking about how is the skill delivered to actual humans in a way that isn't, if you will, too reductive in how we're evaluating things or looking at them. So at least that's my current take. We still have a reason for a job, people. Like we're not.
Yeah, and I'll be clear, kind of on that note, Brad, that this software, much like any of our other learning applications, are not intended to be used in isolation. They are part of a broader effort to become better at a thing. For organizations who are focusing on workforce development and an array of skills for their workforce, these typically go hand in hand and dovetail with the didactic lecture, role play, demonstrations, and then practice repeatedly. If you notice, many of you have been in classrooms and other learning areas where you get a lot of that PowerPoint. You maybe even get a few demonstrations or even a role play or a simulation once or twice. But then after that, it's go out to your practicums, go out to your jobs and learn. And so we're trying to add this to that broader umbrella of skill development by giving you these repeated practice opportunities of these skills you've had access to learning at different levels. And so these tools are not meant to just be in isolation of all other efforts of developing your skill.
Well, it's been almost an hour here. Any final thoughts, Cole or Chad?
You want to answer the last question, Brad? Part of learning MI is feeling and recognizing the tug of war. Can MI do that yet?
Oh, I didn't see the question. Oh, yeah, that's a good one, April. Yeah, that's a whole nother set, this idea of like, how do you teach equanimity, right? Like, so motivational interviewing is very much about this even-handedness or a balanced approach, not being possessive. And I guess we still have a frontier to cross there in virtual space. But yeah, there's a lot of philosophy that goes behind MI as well. So it's a good question. And my answer to that was, and not yet. Like, when do you push and when do you pull and when do you kind of stay in that guiding style? So,
and on that note, we're going to wrap it up. I'm sure we could continue discussing this for hours, but given the task of wrapping things up this afternoon, as Dean Osteen mentioned, I'm Chad McDonald, Director of Social Research Institute and a Research Assistant Professor here at the College of Social Work. In my role, I have the privilege of seeing so much more of the work that Brad, Cole, and the rest of their team are doing, and I'm so proud of what they're adding to our collective body of knowledge and practice. So thank you so much, Brad and Cole. We appreciate your time and enjoyed learning about the work on this issue. And thank you to everyone else who joined us today. For attendees seeking continuing education hours, please watch your email in the coming days for links to the recorded presentation and a brief quiz. Upon successful completion of the quiz, a confirmation of CEU hours will be emailed to you. The College of Social Work is committed to taking the evidence generated through our research and from our labs, not only to the future social workers sitting in our classrooms, but also out into the community and to practitioners beyond our state lines. So we hope you'll join us again for our next Beyond the Classroom event, which will be held on Tuesday, November 19th. This webinar event will feature one of our newest faculty, Dr. Yitong Jin, and her work on psychedelic-assisted interventions. You can find details about all our events on the college's events webpage, socialwork.utah.edu/events. Thank you again for being part of this event.
Thank you.